Little bit of a bonus episode of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. We just did a full, hour and 20-minute Aaron Torres pod. We did everything. We did Tennessee, Georgia, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to waste everybody's time here, but if you missed it, go back and check it out. We did do a Nico Iamaleava segment to wrap the show, and in that segment, I said, listen, I don't think it is out of the realm of possibility that by the time that you listen to this, UCLA may be looking for a new head football coach. Well, it is 1:26 Eastern time. The NFL slate has just started, and Deshaun Foster is officially looking for a job. UCLA firing Deshaun Foster. By the way, Virginia Tech with Brent Pry actually was fired right at the same time. So we have two coaching hirings and two coaching openings. This is so annoying. We have the thing with the ticker is so frustrating. Give me a second really quick here. Everybody come on in. We're going to talk a little bit about UCLA needing a new head coach in just one moment. But give me 1 second here. Ticker. I hate this black background on the ticker. Give me 1 second. Okay, we can't really figure it out. All right, so here's the deal. Deshaun Foster was just fired. If you listen to the pod in the morning, we'll probably add it to the end. But here's the bottom line. If you listen to the Aaron Torres pod, we did an hour show, and I said, listen, the buzz around LA right now is that Deshaun Foster is probably – I think there's a good chance that by the time you listen to the show, Deshaun Foster will be fired. He was just officially fired a few minutes ago. And I want to go ahead and break this all down. So one, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please make sure to do so. This is why you need to put on notifications. This is why you need to put on videos, because you just never know this time of year when stuff is going to happen. By the way, this might not be the only one in the next couple of weeks. Billy Napier, I think if he loses to Miami next week and it's ugly, he could be out. You hear all sorts of stuff about Sam Pittman. You don't know what's true and what's false. So this is why you have to subscribe, put on the notifications, etc. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, you got this as a solo podcast. We're going to put it at the end of the show. But let's go ahead and dive in. Listen, we talked about it a little bit on the pod earlier today. But the bottom line is pretty straightforward, is that if you have watched UCLA football over the last couple, weeks, it's just a total train wreck, okay? And I don't totally blame the administration, and I don't totally blame Deshaun Foster, believe it or not, because the bottom line is it's easy to forget this now. Remember the circumstance in which Deshaun Foster got the UCLA head coaching job. Chip Kelly was clearly on the hot seat. The fans weren't happy. They were ready to move on. He was looking for options and alternatives, but it looked like he was coming back to UCLA for the 2024 season. Then, if you remember, here's the backstory. Bill O'Brien hired as the Ohio State offensive coordinator, and Bill O'Brien is going to be the Ohio State offensive coordinator. Then Jeff Hafley leaves for the NFL, the Green Bay Packers, in February. Chip Kelly replaces Bill. I'm all over the place. Remember, February 2024. Okay, let me backtrack. Bill O'Brien hired as the OC at Ohio State. Then Jeff Hafley leaves for the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator job. The BC job opens. Bill O'Brien gets the head coaching job at Boston College. And Ohio State is looking for an offensive coordinator in the middle of February. And so Chip Kelly decides to leave. We all know that mid to late February is not a great time to be hiring a head coach. And so what ends up happening? They rush into the hire. They hire Deshaun Foster, who I believe had previously been on the staff, but I know he was the Las Vegas Raiders running backs coach when he was officially hired. So yeah, he had been at UCLA as an assistant coach, had been hired by the Las Vegas Raiders, and then, by the way, ends up returning to be the UCLA head coach. So he goes from basically thinking he's a running backs coach to being the head coach. And listen, I can't even sit there and say that right away it was a total disaster. Now, I thought it was a back up against the wall kind of situation. But at the same time, it's easy to forget. Last year, UCLA actually went, 5-7? They started really slow. They were not good. But late in the season, they went on a little bit of a run. I remember them beating Iowa at the Rose Bowl. I remember them winning at Nebraska. And you sat there and said, okay, maybe there's something here. Unfortunately, then they lose to Washington. They lose to USC. They close out at 5-7. But this year, it has been clear from the beginning that, this guy's just not going to work. You lose on opening night to Utah. Okay, you can kind of dismiss it. What happens at Utah? Maybe they're just good. Devin Dampier's okay, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Well, fast forward. You go to UNLV and you lose. That's supposed to be a weekend getaway for your fans. They go to Vegas, they party, they have a good time, they go to the game, you kick UNLV's butt, they go to the casinos and blow all their money, right? You lose that game. But we just talked about it on the Aaron Torres pod about an hour ago. The loss to New Mexico, it was just clear this cannot continue, right? First of all, you're going into a bye, which I think is a big deal. But in the New Mexico game, you lose 35-10. These are some of the crazy stats on the New Mexico game. You never had the lead against New Mexico at home. You're playing New Mexico in the Rose Bowl. There is no crowd. You never had the lead against New Mexico. You were down 14-0. You cut it to 14-10. They end up winning 35-10. And it's just a total train wreck, right? And so you lose to New Mexico. It's a bye game. You paid them $1 million to show up. I think as concerning, you give up almost 500 yards of total offense, 300 yards rushing, and it just felt like a game that you cannot recover from. I was texting my buddy Garrett Carr. He used to write over at Aaron Torres online. And I said, look, if I was Martin Jarmond, the AD of UCLA, I said, I'd fire him tonight. And I'll tell you why. Because I still think Martin Jarmond, the AD, can kind of sell, hey, you know what? I didn't really get a chance to do the hiring right last time. I hired this dude at the end of February. I couldn't do a real coaching search. Give me a chance to do a real coaching search. Now, the question becomes, is Martin Jarmond going to be allowed to do this coaching search? I'll give you, for people who do not know, I know we have thousands of new people that find this YouTube channel every single month. I live in Los Angeles, okay? I don't have all the answers to everything, but what I can tell you is Martin Jarmond, the AD at UCLA, I like him. I know him a little bit. I've had a few meals with him, respect the hell out of him as a dude. I can promise you that he is as much on the hot seat as Deshaun Foster was. And the only reason I thought Deshaun Foster might keep his job for a couple more weeks was because I just wasn't sold that UCLA was going to let Martin Jarmond, the current AD, actually make the next hire. Well, we still don't know what's going to happen with Martin Jarmond, the AD. We still don't know if he is going to keep his job. But what we do know is Deshaun Foster is out. So let's talk about this. Deshaun Foster's out. I have a few names that I'm going to get to in a minute, but let me start by saying this. UCLA, to me, is one of the most fascinating jobs in college football. Because it was funny, I have a buddy, I won't name his name, I don't know if he wants it out there, but he's a UCLA insider. He knows that program inside out. We were arguing on Saturday. We were texting during some of the games about what UCLA can be. Now, let me give a positive, but let me give a negative. Let me give a realistic thing. The positive is this. UCLA, Southern California, there's plenty of talent here. Beyond that, there are a lot of very wealthy boosters. I mean, there are people, a lot of boosters that have a B in front of their net worth, billionaires, okay? USC, we're seeing it on the other side of town. USC is raising NIL money out the you-know-what for Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley has completely restructured that coaching staff, and USC's probably spending $20+ million on the roster this year, probably $10+ million on the staff, plus $10+ million for Lincoln Riley. They're giving him everything that they need to succeed. And UCLA can have access to the same resources, but one, they got to have the right coach. And two, again, are they going to let the AD make the hire? So if they're not, they probably need to fire the AD pretty soon. They probably need to get a new AD in place pretty soon so that they can actually begin the search. To me, this is going to be the most fascinating thing. If you have a situation where UCLA will coach, but you need somebody you need the structure in order. You need the right AD, hiring the right guy who is going to ignite the right people. What I will also say on a negative side, with UCLA, I don't think you need me to tell you, the fan base is a little fickle, right? And it's very interesting with UCLA. is that, I always say this about LA, and again, I do live in LA. LA to me, people say it's a bad sports town. It's not a bad sports town. I remember vividly when I first moved to LA, there was one weekend where in the same Saturday, UCLA had about 80,000 people at the Rose Bowl. This was when they were good under Jim Mora. USC had about 100,000 people at the Coliseum. This was when Lane Kiffin had the number one team in the country for a very small window. And the Dodgers had 60,000 people at Dodger Stadium for a playoff game. This was all on the same Saturday. The one thing about LA is that, I'll just tell you this. I live in LA. It's hard to get everywhere. And I'm not making excuses. I'm not comparing it to Knoxville, Tuscaloosa, Norman, Oklahoma, whatever. I understand those fan bases are on a different level. But what I'll say is, in LA, people have too many options, too much spending availability. There's only so many discretionary dollars to go around. They're not going to go watch a bad product. So if you can put a good product on the field, and I think you have to be in the community too. That was the thing with Chip Kelly, that Chip Kelly won games. Chip Kelly just didn't want to do all the other stuff. He didn't want to go to booster events. He didn't really want to recruit. He just wanted to coach ball, and that's why it would never work. I don't know who the perfect candidate would be, but it would have to be somebody. I'm trying to think off the top of my head of somebody that I think feel like the right energy for the job, like Marcus Freeman. Smart guy, and Marcus Freeman is not taking the job, so I hope that's clear. I'm just talking about a Marcus Freeman type of smart guy, understands football, willing to recruit, but is going to be in the community, is going to say the right things, is going to show up to events, is going to smile, is going to kiss babies, is going to do what you need to do, and then you got to be a good enough football coach as well. So, in LA, you have to do stuff to stand out. That's just the reality. And so we'll see what happens. As far as candidates, I just got a couple. One, I have to look into, this guy's buyout. I have been told by credible people, Jedd Fisch at Washington, one, is not happy. Two, remember, he took that Washington job just to get out of Arizona. Listen, I'll just say this. I think he made the biggest mistake of his life leaving Arizona. Arizona would have had the Big 12 favorite last year had he stayed. They fell apart. They're now 3-0. I think he regrets leaving Arizona for Washington. And he's already complaining about Washington. We don't have enough NIL. Compared to others, we're behind, blah, 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 this and that. And I think he knows he screwed up, and I think he knows that there are better spots for him. Jedd Fisch is a guy who has previously coached at UCLA. I'm telling you, I know he is going to try to get that job because I'm pretty sure he tried to get that job even after taking the Washington job a couple years ago. So will he be able to get it? I don't know what the buyout is off the top of my head. I want it to come live. I wanted to react as quickly as I could, and I'll figure out the buyout stuff going forward. Beyond him, the dream candidate, I'll tell you what the dream candidate is for UCLA. He's the candidate that comes up in every coaching search. It's Lane Kiffin. Now, is Lane Kiffin leaving UCLA for UCLA? 99% no. Let me lay out the argument, though. One, I think, respectfully, I don't think any of us think that he's retiring at Ole Miss. He's got it really good there, and I know his daughter goes to school there and all that. But what I would also say is this. We know he loves the water. We know he wants to be by the beach. That's why he's always linked to Miami and Florida and whatever. And I'm telling you, I was told, remember that UCLA job opened in February, that if the timing had been a little bit different, I think he would have considered that UCLA job the last time it opened. Now, remember, this was February of 2024 when it opened. Jackson Dart decided to return. He recruited all those guys in the portal, the Walter Nolans, all the guys that they had last year. And he knew he had a national championship team, so he wasn't going to blow it up. But now you look at his situation at Ole Miss, and I think this year is actually a good metaphor for what the reality is at Ole Miss. Everything went right last year. Everything that could have went right did. Veteran quarterback, humming offense, you recruit the portal well, you have the right money at the right time, and guess what? It still wasn't good enough to get into a college football playoff. And so if in a best case scenario, you couldn't get into a 12-team college football playoff, what is really the ceiling at Ole Miss? What is really realistic about Ole Miss and as far as what you can actually do at Ole Miss? I mean, yeah, maybe you can make a 12-team playoff, but I think this year we're seeing it. You had a team that was perfectly built for last year. You're not a team that can recruit well enough in high school to year over year over year have a team that's good enough to compete at the highest level of college football. And you're not Georgia. You're not Bama. You're not Ohio State, where you can lose 8, 9, 10 guys to the NFL like you did last year and just immediately replace them. Ohio State has 14 guys drafted. They don't miss a beat. Michigan last year had 13 guys drafted. If they had a quarterback, they probably would have won 10 games. And so I just bring it up. Ole Miss isn't that team. And so I do wonder if Lane Kiffin has kind of hit his ceiling, right? We're seeing it this year. The defense, which was maybe the top defense in college football last year, couldn't stop Arkansas, couldn't get Arkansas off the field last night. And if Arkansas doesn't fumble that ball, they end up probably losing that game. And so I just bring it up because when I look at the situation in Ole Miss, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Lane Kiffin would at least consider, hey, is there one more option for me? And I'll be realistic. I think the right guy at UCLA, I do think can make the college football playoff. It sounds crazy, but listen, if Indiana can make the college football playoff, if Illinois can be in position to make the college football playoff, there's no reason that UCLA can't be the third or fourth best team in the Big Ten. And oh, by the way, let's never forget, we're eventually going to get to a 16-team playoff, maybe even more, where we're talking about 4, 5, 6 teams in the Big Ten that could potentially make the college football playoff. So again, I just come back to, I see the chat where people are saying there's 0% chance that they'll never win there. I disagree. I think there are places that I think are basically impossible to win in college football in 2025. I wouldn't want to be the Maryland coach. I wouldn't want to be I think Vandy, this is going to be about as good as it gets with Pavia this year. I mean, can he get to like 8 wins? UCLA, I don't think would be the worst possible place that you could be. So those are my reactions. Let me get to some comments in the chat. Just a total disaster. Paul, fire early. Paul brings up a really good point, and this is kind of an important point as to why this decision was made right now. Is remember, people were freaking out. People always said, like, you don't want to fire a coach because players can enter the portal. Well, guess what? The semester has basically started everywhere. Now, UCLA is actually on the quarter system. I think they haven't even started their fall quarter yet. But I bring it up because you're not going to enter the portal now if you're a player. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. There's what are you going to do? But the counter to that is you're kind of stuck for the rest of the season. And then it does give you time. And then remember, the portal doesn't open, the way that they're structuring things, the portal isn't going to open until January. So you have time to get a coach in place in December and make that hire. So we'll see what happens. I think that's an interesting byproduct of all this, of just, do we live in a world now where with the portal now moving back to January, you can make this firing a little bit earlier without worrying about guys entering the portal the day the season ends. So I think it's a very interesting byproduct of the world that we live in. And I think it's an important thing. Lastly, I'll say this, we talked about Nico on the show this morning. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Nico here, but you just talk about an all-time train wreck of a decision for a kid and for a family. Listen, we don't need to relitigate it now. I did a full show on it. But at the same time, what I'll say is this kid left a team that was going to play, was in a game, top 15 matchup yesterday, decides to leave. He ends up in a situation now where his coach is fired. And I'll say this, it can't get worse. But I do think like 0-12 is in play for UCLA. Nico, what a disaster. But I think that's it for this. Before we get out of here, a couple quick reminders. Make sure you're subscribed. This is why you got to put on notifications. You never know when we're going to go live. You never know when we're going to have stuff to talk about. So please make sure that you are subscribed. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. By the way, while we're here, we should thank our partners. First of all, now that Deshaun Foster's gone, UCLA fans, if you want tickets to the next game, you can probably get them for pretty cheap. You know how you can get them cheaper? SeatGeek. SeatGeek is America's #1 ticketing app. Bottom line is that, they have a special offer. Aaron Torres, for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod, my phone's blowing up right now. But SeatGeek.com, if you use promo code Torres, it's going to get you $20 off your first purchase. So it could be to a UCLA football game. It could be to a Tennessee football game. We're going to have a lot of Tennessee fans that probably watch this. You could have it to a concert, a show. Maybe you live in LA and you're done watching UCLA, but you want to get to one of the concerts at the Rose Bowl. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. Also, just really quick, thank you to Circa Casino, Circa Sportsbook. I keep saying it. They not only have the best place to watch games in Vegas, that beautiful facility in the Circa Casino, but guess what? If you live on that Tennessee-Kentucky border, we got a lot of Vol fans that are going to watch this. They have just opened a casino, Franklin, Kentucky, Mint Kentucky Downs. It is a Circa Sportsbook, a replica sportsbook of the spot in Vegas. You don't even need to go out to Vegas. You can go to Circa, a busy NFL Sunday like today. Guess what? You want to watch all the games in one place, Circa Casino, Circa Sportsbook. That is Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. And finally, our friends Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Use promo code Torres to get 15% off your purchase. All right, I'm out of here. It is 10:46 Pacific time. I've done 2 hours of live content since I woke up today. And I went to bed probably well after midnight. So I'm going to go watch some NFL, get ready for the rest of the day. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. JJ Reddick, you F-head, unblock me, bro. I'll be back. New episode of the Aaron Torres pod. Probably